Falche hula duine, ha mi an dochus go velu go ma, agus ha mi an dochus gun kost am video show rave. Ha vi mi a brúin Gaelic fad na hunje, os chanil mi fileche ach ha mi toshigig ag yongshigig. So obviously that wasn't flawless, but I promise I will keep working on it so long as I haven't ostracised myself from the Gaelic community by butchering their wonderful language. But man, I've been really excited to release this video alongside the launch of the Gaelic course beta on Duolingo. Oh wait. Oh no. Oh shit. Oh fuck. Alright, so, the plan is, I'm going to start by taking you on a journey into the future to what happens after Gaelic is revived in Scotland. After an independent Scotland passes the Official Language Act of 2023, Gaelic and Scots become the official languages of Scotland. The combined sexual energy this creates spreads rapidly throughout the UK and Ireland before influencing mainland Europe. World governments make the decision to fold themselves into Scotland, and Gaelic ends up being spoken from Kirkcaldy to Cape Town and from Ballachulish to Beijing. Gaelic is also playing a massive and pivotal role in Nova Scotia, New Alapa, New Scotland, Alapaska, Scalifornia, that one, Scolumbia, Cill, Spirou, and Scotland Down Under. Right, it took me 194 hours of streaming to be able to film that. I still see this game in my fucking sleep. And 194 hours is actually considered a disappointingly small amount of time on this game by the community. That clip took me, what, like 30 seconds? I could have just left it out, and it could have just saved me the effort completely. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about Scottish Gaelic, because I think the conversation around Gaelic, particularly in Scotland's media, but also in general online discussion, is pretty poor. Some articles are written with this undeserved disdain, referring to Gaelic as a tongue-twisting language. And you might think I'm grasping at straws here, but if you're a Gaelic speaker having to read what some random, almost definitely monolingual journalist thinks about your language, I imagine it's pretty fucking tiring. Now, I'm unfortunately not a native Gaelic speaker. I do intend on becoming one, but I never had the opportunity to study Gaelic at school, and my experience with Gaelic at a young age was normally when I was staring into the abyss of a bowl of Cheerios while watching CBeebies in the morning. And the main Gaelic show on BBC Alapa featured these three characters on screen just now called what I think is pronounced Nadoinja Bega, which I also think translates to the fairies or the little people. Of course, the language barrier didn't stop a young me having a crush on the purple one, and that's probably why I fancied Arwen in Lord of the Rings. It was the pointy ears. I wouldn't have my next proper encounter with Gaelic as a language for quite a while, and I think it's important to point out that one of the major challenges that faced Gaelic, particularly while I was growing up in the early 2000s, was accessibility. There wasn't a public body for Gaelic learning and resources weren't readily available. My primary school probably couldn't have offered me the choice to learn Gaelic even if it wanted to. They simply didn't have the means. This meant that my next exposure to Gaelic was through music. Now, some of you might know that in Scotland, we've got a legendary piece of music that always plays at the end of the night on Hogmanay and at any decent ceilidh or wedding. The beauty of this song, and the dance that goes along with it, is that it's almost never done properly, because by that time we're all too pished to really care. I'm not talking about Auld Lang Syne, I'm of course talking about Loch Lomond by Runrig. There is no denying that Loch Lomond is an absolute tune, and the sense of community and the emotion of the end of the year it brings is amplified by the fact you're standing in a circle with everyone that is still able to stand at the end of the night. Everyone tries to sing along until they reach this one bit, and then they just make noises that sound like they could be words, but everyone's actually just mumbling in the hope no one asks what they're saying. And that's because there's a part of the song that's chanted in Gaelic, with the words Ho Moyenin Boyach, which, if my translation skills are up to scratch, means my beautiful sweetheart. Just imagine me looking like this as I say it. I suppose that was my gateway into appreciating Gaelic, and there's loads of great bands out there that do sing in Gaelic. Two of my favourites are Skippinish and Manran. And I also have a slightly different view on languages in general because I've studied languages for a while, even going so far as to do a joint language degree at university. So I thought that I'd share this appreciation when I uploaded a really badly formatted clip of a current member of the Scottish Parliament giving a speech in Gaelic. And everyone's face in the video is like really badly stretched out. I'd forgotten how to use Premiere Pro and I didn't catch it until it had a bunch of views. It's now approaching 500,000 views, which is just incredible to be honest. However, I would like to take this moment to apologise to Kate Forbes in particular. You deserved so much better, Kate. Sorry. It was that video that led me to research a wee bit more about Gaelic, and I wanted to find really genuine examples of what people thought about the Gaelic language. So naturally, I dived right into the YouTube comments to read all the insightful and serious things that were being said. Now, this video won't just be a review of people's comments, but I imagine at least a few of them will give us an insight into what people generally think about Gaelic. I mean, no one's ever an arsehole on the internet or anything, so we'll probably be fine. First, we've got Big Daddy Bulge 420 commenting, "As we are British, we should only be learning English, as the Gaelic language has no international use today. Also, rule Britannia, Britannia rules the wave." That's wave, singular. Which, in fairness, the state of the Navy after Brexit, it'll probably just be the one wave. So he's quite right. So we've got weird British nationalism. Now, who could have possibly guessed that this would come up? Moving on, we've got Nikita Volochenko that states, "But Gaelic is a useless language. This is coming from someone who grew up in Scotland. Absolutely pointless. Don't see the fuss in schools stopping teaching it." Somewhat misunderstanding that schools aren't stopping teaching Gaelic. And also the term useless language is like the perfect example of an oxymoron. So, second, we've got useless language klaxon. Excellent. And user Ducks and Pucks posted a comment and then returned to edit their post, which now reads, "That was one of the sexiest things I have ever seen. She is absolutely beautiful, an attractive woman speaking her native tongue. Now, if you'll excuse me, I will retreat to ratchet my jaw off the floor." Surprised emoji. Aye, and their family name Forbes is a rather old clan name if I am not mistaken. Wink emoji. I feel fucking minging after reading that. However, this does confirm my earlier point about the sexual energy Gaelic gives off, unfortunately also attracting weirdos. One of the main reasons for hating Gaelic seems to stem from this strange belief that Gaelic advocates want a monolingual Scotland that only speaks Gaelic, and that the Scottish National Party, otherwise known as the SNP, are hoping to weaponise Gaelic to instill division between Scotland and the rest of the UK. This particular belief is mostly shared amongst Unionist Twitter. Now, what's Unionist Twitter? For those of you out the loop, Scotland had a referendum in 2014 on the subject of Scottish independence, and while great gains were made by the Yes campaign, we missed out on gaining independence, and I've been an emotionless husk ever since. Just after the release of Gaelic on Duolingo, Times journalist Alex Massey posted that he'd started learning Gaelic, and he was enjoying the new Duolingo course. And this attracted Andrew Kelman, who is very keen to have fact checker in their Twitter name, and if that isn't a giant red flag, then I don't really know what is. Andrew Kelman, fact checker, chimed in by saying, little realising the stupid Stuarts led these fools to their deaths, and how much better off the country was for the Union. Taking up Gaelic is just a desperate attempt to disassociate yourself from an honourable imperial heritage and inevitable white guilt. Yeek. So that's what we're dealing with. Now, it's important to remember here that supporting the Union doesn't make you anti-Gaelic by any stretch of the imagination, nor does it make you a Zoomer like Andrew Kelman. There's also supporters of independence who hate on Gaelic, although they tend to have a slightly different take, often saying Scotland should be focusing on other languages to be more international. The hardcore British nationalist outlook on Gaelic can sometimes go into weird extremes, and we can take a look at another Twitter user known for their somewhat rabid dislike of Gaelic. Meet Jill Stevenson, who, as far as I'm aware, is an emeritus professor at the University of Edinburgh, and she's claimed several times over the years that Gaelic is a foreign language. She tweets under the name History Woman, and here we have her saying, in reference to the Scottish Government, "All they have done is irritate people who are essentially well disposed towards Gaelic by forcing its incomprehensible language on us all. It is that alone that has driven me to consider it a foreign language as inscrutable as Thai or Vietnamese." Now, if by foreign here Jill means unfamiliar, then obviously any language that she didn't grow up speaking could be classed as a foreign language. However, we will give Jill this point here when she says that English is the only language the overwhelming majority of us speak daily, and it is true that most daily conversation in Scotland probably takes place in Scottish Standard English, and probably with a fair amount of Scots as well. But I think it's important we put the lack of Gaelic speakers in context, and one of the main reasons why there are so few speakers of Gaelic is that in the 1872 Education Scotland Act, it banned Gaelic teaching in schools, and even banned kids from speaking it in the playground. Those that did received the belt, so the language was quite literally beaten out of them. This was only remedied with an additional Education Act in 1980, but provided no solid Gaelic language plan. But I don't think Jill particularly cares about the historic persecution of Gaelic anyway. I think the bitter aggressive tone when describing Gaelic as foreign might allude to some of her other values. Here's a retweet of an image making fun of autism, with some anti-refugee sentiment, racism and homophobia chucked in for good measure. At least the worms eating her brain will have had a good feed. And I suppose the real question is, Edinburgh Uni, what are you doing? Nobody is so important that you have to allow someone like this to retain the title Emeritus Professor. Ex-professor, retired professor, or that one professor who turned out to be a massive bigot would probably do. So, the first question we have to ask when looking at the evil nationalist plot argument is there a solid basis for claiming that the SNP are forcing Gaelic on the Scottish population? And the answer is, not really, because the Gaelic Language Scotland Act of 2005 was introduced during a Labour and Liberal Democrat coalition, and this led to the establishment of Borna Gaelic, an organisation which promotes the Gaelic language throughout Scotland. Now, the SNP backed the Gaelic language bill at the time, but unlike just now, they weren't the party of government then, and it was actually a Labour MSP, Peter Peacock, that brought the bill to Parliament. The bill was also voted through unanimously, with all parties across the whole political spectrum voting for it, so the whole evil nationalist plot idea kinda just falls short. Even though the SNP are the current party of government, it's not like learning Gaelic's mandatory or anything. The promotion of the language by Borna Gaelic is to ensure it's accessible for people who want to learn. They help develop language plans, provide funding, and advise businesses as well. And I couldn't find any mission statement from them focusing on purging the English language from Scotland. I'm now imagining all the board members of Borna Gaelic breathe a sigh of relief. Don't worry folks, I won't tell anyone. With the recent release of Gaelic on Duolingo, there was one grumpy Twitter user that did catch my eye. Like all these weird accounts, I'm never entirely sure if they're a parody or not because they're so fucking stupid. But Twitter user Davy Cooper Sash believes that the Scottish National Party paid $500,000 on making Gaelic Duolingo, while millions of kids die in Scotland from drug usage. We also get a rather silly mix-up of the difference between the Scottish Government and the party in government. The Scottish National Party currently runs a minority government in the Scottish Parliament. That means the Scottish Government can't pass policy without agreement from the other parties, so that clears up the whole one-party state nonsense he mentions. And if the SNP pay for something, then they'd be paying for it as a political party, so that money would come from a completely separate budget from the Scottish Government. Now you know! Sorry, I veered wildly off track there. Davy Cooper Sash is hardly making a good faith argument, but It's this constant stream of shite that native Gaelic speakers have to put up with on an almost daily basis. Davy Cooper-Sash then goes on to say that the creators of the Duolingo course are simply trying to use technology to undo God's will. To be honest, I just need to stop looking at Twitter. Twitter's a silly place. This rage against imaginary Gaelic enforcement culminates in the hilarious road signs argument. Some people get absolutely raging about Gaelic appearing on road signs, as if it'll hypnotise people into supporting independence. And who better to ask for their perspective on Scottish Gaelic road signs than a man who was apparently kicked out of UKIP for denying the Holocaust? Meet Alistair McConaughey, who founded the pro-UK organisation A Force for Good, which according to their website publishes British Union philosophy, policy and history. There's a video of Alistair moaning about the road signs in Scotland that I was going to add in here, but I imagine there'd probably be an attempt to copyright strike me, regardless of fair use, so I've instead linked the video in the description for you to peruse if you fancy. The section of the video covering road signs starts around the 7-minute mark, and Alistair was kind enough to supply us with a link to the transcript, which we will definitely comment on. Alistair starts off his section on road signs by saying, "Road signs are extremely visible political banners. It's not surprising that the SNP wanted full control over them, and it's surprising that the pro-UK political parties don't appear to have seen the danger." And I find this interesting because literally banning a language from being taught doesn't seem to strike Alistair as a political move. It's only road signs that are the political ones here. He continues by saying, "If we give the SNP control over road signs, then let's imagine how this is going to play out. Right now, only road signs in the Highland area are dual English and Gaelic. The SNP could try and make all road signs dual language, and then they'll want to brand every road sign with a saltire. Just in case we'd forgotten that we were in Scotland, fuck's sake. Just in case we forget that the road sign was provided by the graciousness of their Scottish government." I'm just imagining the rage that Alistair flies into when he passes the sign at the borders. He goes on and says, "They'll invent new road symbols just to be different from English roads. You know, if they could change all the signs to kilometres, they'd probably want to do that as well." Did no one review his script? This is insane. I know we're dealing with a Holocaust denier who, as last updated in 2018, still stands by his comments apparently. Just imagine being so paranoid and defensive about the political influence of monolingual road signs that you just jump head first down the conspiracy black hole of just Nut Job Batshittery. Hopefully we've put the evil Gaelic nationalist plot argument to rest now. The only people making that argument are probably not the best sources to go to when it comes to anything, let alone Gaelic. Next up, however, we've got, is Gaelic a foreign language? We saw a bit of it earlier, but there's an argument that goes along the lines of Gaelic was never spoken here, and our friend Jill Historywoman Stevenson took it a step further by declaring Gaelic to be a foreign language. Now, I don't think Jill's been sincere here at all, but we're going to take it at face value because I've already written this next bit. I think it's important to frame this correctly because with the likes of Pictish, Cumbric, Norse and Gaelic cutting about in early 900s Scotland, there was undoubtedly a fair mix of language, and it's highly likely that Scotland was never completely monolingual. The Gaelic as a foreign language trope seems to stem from the inaccurate belief that the original native people of Scotland were supplanted by some form of Irish invasion of Western Scotland, or a group belonging to the Irish ruling class removed and then became the local rulers there. But when you look for the evidence for an Irish invasion or an elite takeover, there just doesn't seem to be any. There should be some form of archaeological evidence for a mass migration of people, whether that's in the form of jewellery left behind or the differences between settlements that a new group would establish. Ewan Campbell, Director of Archaeology at the University of Glasgow, wrote this in early 2001. The characteristic settlement forms in Ireland are circular enclosures with earthen banks, raths,
or stone walls, cashels, and artificial dwellings, crannogs. Crannogs are found in Argyll, but unfortunately for proponents of an Irish origin of crannogs, dendrochronological dating has shown that Scottish crannogs have been constructed since the early Iron Age, while Irish ones almost all date after 600 AD, suggesting, if anything, an influence from Scotland to Ireland. But I'm not about to join that bun fight with my Irish brethren, so we're going to move on. Campbell also proposes a different perspective on cultural divides in early Scotland. He reckons the interpretation of linguists has tended to be affected by geography, in which the Irish Sea separated the Gael and the Briton, whereas early commentators argued that the Grampian Highlands was more likely to be the linguistic divide, because the passages through the Highlands were narrow and several days' worth of travel. It's completely possible that the early inhabitants of Argyll kept a regional identity, and throughout the Iron Age to the medieval period were Gaelic speakers. So hopefully that's a different perspective on the foreign invasion question, and we can now leave the Scotland origin story and move on to the Scotland expanded universe, because if Gaelic isn't an evil foreign language, then the next stage of that argument is that Gaelic was never spoken in certain areas of Scotland. And a good way to gauge this is if we look at the places in which the place names were influenced by Gaelic. That'll give us an idea of how widely spoken it was. If you're not getting the visual metaphor here, I'm sweeping the iron brew cans under the carpet. Because there's a point that a lot of the Gaelic was never spoken here crowd seem to deliberately avoid, and that point is that a language doesn't have to be the majority language in an area to have ever been spoken there. Chances are Gaelic probably was spoken there at some stage. Did you interview all the people who've ever been there, ever? No, you didn't. Anyway, check these maps out. They act as a rough guide on the areas of Scotland in which Gaelic influenced the place names. It's not a super complete list or anything, so don't take it as final. And don't worry, I will go over some other place names in a bit, but for now just please forgive my pronunciations here. The dots on the first map represent areas where the Gaelic Cill, meaning church, appears in the place name. On the second map here, we have places deriving from achag, meaning field. I've probably got that wrong. And this third map features the Gaelic word for settlement, balla. Again, this isn't a complete map, but I'm trying to get across here that there's a lot of interesting history to unearth in Scotland if you know how the places were named. And now we'll move on to another argument, and it's one of my least favourite. So that's evil nationalist plot, and Gaelic is a foreign language. So we'll move on to the argument that boils my piss the most. And the argument goes, Scottish students would be better off learning a more useful language like Chinese or Russian. If only we knew someone with a degree in Chinese and Russian to get their insight. Hi, I'm AyeforScotland, and I've got both of them. See what I did there? I lined up that point so I could tell you I have a degree in languages. I suffered through 4 years to be able to say that, so please just give me this. I need it. I need to know it was for something. I've always found the argument that I mentioned above to be used mostly by English-speaking monoglots who have no intention or interest in learning another language. I am yet to meet a serious linguist who aggressively asserts there are certain languages in the world that are completely useless. For a start, there's obvious cognitive benefits from learning a language from an early age. An argument occasionally directed towards bilingualism is that children often grow up confused, but these arguments are often presented because the person arguing doesn't understand the concept of code switching. Now, code switching is when someone uses words from different languages in the same sentence together, and it's actually fairly common with people at any age who are studying another language. When I moved from Russia to China, I'd find that my Russian that I'd gotten used to speaking would creep in at random points and ruin my Chinese sentence, leaving the lovely lady at the canteen just as confused as I was. Studies show that young kids who are raised bilingual perform better in tasks which involve switching between different activities. Learning a language from an early age literally trains the brain in a way that makes people deliberately shift focus at a better rate. That's pretty cool, right? And that brings me to my next point. The learning of a second language boosts the acquisition of a third language. Training the brain to switch up tasks is one benefit, but the particular skill set to learn a language is also acquired. Now, I wasn't brought up bilingual, and that's right, I've made this about me again, but even though Russian and Chinese are not linguistically similar, the process of learning a language in terms of knowing where to even start and the milestones to aim for is a skill in itself, and it's a skill that transfers extremely well into the job market, regardless of profession. I mentioned earlier that I'd be speaking about Scottish place names, and to me this is one of the most interesting parts about Gaelic, and that part is actually knowing why places around Scotland are called what they are. There's places like Cabrach, which in Gaelic means stag, but also means thicket, and Cabrach, funnily enough, has a load of deer nearby. The prefix Inver appears in a front of a whole raft of Scottish place names, and it's the anglicised form of Inir, which means mouth of, so Inverness becomes mouth of the River Ness, which is where it's located. Similarly with Glen, which is the anglicised form of Scottish Gaelic's Glealn, which defines a river valley in a hilly or mountainous area. Some of you might have heard of Gleneagles, which is famous for a luxury hotel and golf course by the same name. Gleneagles comes from Glealn Igleish, which translates to Glen of the Church. And there's a whole load of Scottish places partly named after the Scottish Gaelic Cill, meaning church, and I'll tell you a few now. Kilbride, Kilcreggan, Kildonan, Killen, Kilmahog, Kilmarnock, Kilmore, Kilrenny, Kiltairn, Kilwinning. You get the idea. We like churches. And it's not like there isn't any other place names with different origins. For example, I'm from a place called Falkirk, which is an anglicised version of the Scots Falkirk, which translates to speckled church in Scots. Why speckled church? Because the church was built with stones that weren't all the same colour. I challenge you to write a more interesting fact in the comments. And last but not least, Thomas Bach of the School of Philosophy, Psychology and Language Sciences at the University of Edinburgh commented on a medical journal back in 2013 that bilingualism might have a stronger influence on dementia than any currently available drugs. And if you want to get your brain gain on, a group of Swedish scientists who conducted a bunch of MRI scans on a language learning control group found that both the hippocampus and areas of the cerebral cortex had developed more in those that studied languages. But can you see the other weird problem here? I could list benefits all day and would hear the exact same argument, at least for 3 out of my 4 points. Why can't we teach another language instead? And I suppose the central point to all of this is that learning Gaelic doesn't prevent anyone from learning another language. It's possible to learn more than one language, and hell, some people are so talented they can speak 5, 6, 7 languages. Even among pro-independence groups, a narrative occasionally pops up saying that learning Gaelic is isolationist and not thinking internationally, and I suppose that brings me to my final point of the video. And that final point is, Gaelic medium education doesn't force kids to be monolingual Gaelic speakers. Gaelic medium education is a system of education for bilingualism and biliteracy, both in Scottish Gaelic and in English, and it began in Scotland in 1985, with only 2 primary schools teaching only 24 pupils. The good news is this number has grown, with over 4,300 students being in Gaelic medium education in 2018. These pupils still have access to all the English literature they want, and still get access to learning foreign languages in schools as well. There's nothing insular about learning Gaelic at all. At the end of the day, it's up to you if you want to learn Gaelic. No one's putting a gun to your head. And if you've got such a problem with a language that you'll take to the internet to moan about it, then maybe it's time you step back. Just get some perspective. Realise it's maybe you that's being insular. That concludes my defence of Gaelic, but there's a few things that I want to say before I finish, and I want to talk about Duolingo. And I've mentioned it the whole way throughout this video, And to be honest, I did kind of make this video as a bit of a love letter to the Gaelic community. Now, Gaelic Duolingo has been about for roughly a week, and during that time there's been an explosion in people starting to learn. So much so that the unaffiliated Scottish Gaelic Duolingo Twitter account posted the bittersweet moment in which Gaelic Duolingo learners overtook the number of native Gaelic speakers. I can see why this would feel bittersweet, but the fact that the Gaelic community got together and took a Duolingo course from conception through to public beta in record time is incredible and something to be admired. And the sheer number of people signing up for it means that you've made it accessible to people who have probably wanted to learn for a long time but just haven't had the means. Duolingo probably isn't the app to become a native level speaker with, but that's because it's more about making language learning available and accessible, and this will hopefully inspire more people to develop an interest in Gaelic and want to develop their language further. Another amazing thing about the course is that it includes the different dialects of Gaelic as well. I've heard some of the audio pronounce agus, the word for and, as aius on some occasion, and it's great to see that the community thought about that representation throughout the course. So I'd just like to say to everyone who pushed for, marketed and contributed to the Gaelic Duolingo course, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, you've done a fantastic job and you should be proud of what you've done. I hope that's given you something to think about. For those who are interested in learning Gaelic, I hope you're feeling galvanised after watching this video and you go and you sign up for Duolingo. Seriously, just go and do it. You won't regret it. And if you're on Twitter, one of my favourite Twitter accounts at the moment is The Daily Gael, and whoever runs the social media and their website honestly deserves so much recognition for the work that they do. To be honest, the whole of Gaelic Twitter is really good, and it's been great chatting to a few of them in preparation for this video, and I hope I've done right by all of you who do watch this. I hope to join your ranks as a non-native but well-intentioned speaker someday soon. To the Gaelic Duolingo group sprouting up on Facebook, it's honestly amazing reading posts from people who have never really studied another language, asking and learning about Gaelic grammar and using what they've learned in the comments section. That's the power that Duolingo has, and it's all thanks to the dedicated contributors who've built a course. And no, I'm not being sponsored by Duolingo, because if I was, I'd actually be able to pay my rent. That being said, I would like to say a huge thanks to the names that are on the screen right now for supporting me on Patreon. So that's Anonymous, Lego 2x4, Dylan Aitken, Catriona MacDonald, Fitz Amasov, and Misty Jones. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Saga Crawford as well. You've been unbelievably helpful, so thank you. If you'd like to join these names, then check out the link to my Patreon below. You'll get access to behind the scenes clips, you'll be able to view these videos early and then critique them, you get votes on future content, and you get some other cool perks and bits and pieces. So thanks very much to all of you, and thanks to you for watching this video. Slán